Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's now 4:45. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Welcome to our pre-commission meeting. First on the docket is Compass. Just want to welcome you all for being here. We're so excited to hear your Safe Streets for All Action Plan presentation.
Thank you for having me this afternoon. I think I have a presentation coming up here somewhere. All right. Again, thank you, Commission, for having me. My name is Hunter Mulhall, Municipal Planner with Compass. I'm talking to you today about our Safe Streets and Roads for All Regional Safety Action.
Sorry, I want to pause. It's not sharing the screen on our end. That's what I mean, yeah. It's a little too efficient. Thanks, Hunter.
Good to go?
Yep, we're good to go.
All right. Talk about some of the detail program. Talk about our regional approach plan, Compass's role, timeline, and next. National statistics here. The leading cause of death for people under the age of 54 are traffic crashes, according to CDC. We have some of the highest population-based death traffic crashes with comparison to 28 other high-income countries. We're seeing high rates of pedestrians struck and killed in the first 6 months of the data from 2022 as compared to pre-COVID numbers in 2020. Many of us know somebody have been impacted by traffic crashes. Here are the 5 federal performance measures that Compass report to FHWA each regards to crash statistics. Fatalities, serious injuries, rates for those statistics, and then the non-motorized serious injuries and fatalities combined. That's your bicyclists and your pedestrians. You can see we're trending downward statewide for 4 out of those 5 measures, with the exception of fatalities. Regionally, for Ada and Canyon counties, you're seeing downward trends for all 5 of these measures. Let's make sure that we keep these trends going downward and even accelerate that trend. I suspect that when some of the low numbers from COVID 20 and 21 come out of these 5-year averages, that trend could change.
Hunter, really quick. So is there a reason why, so regional is just the Ada and Canyon counties?
That's correct.
So do you have any of those numbers for Ada County specifically?
I do, not on me though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just anecdotally, I think we're all very much aware of the headlines and when we see these crashes happen. And I think just from a bystander perspective, it definitely seems like there's even more happening in Canyon County. So
right.
I think having more nuanced data around Ada County would be really helpful to inform our decisions as well.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, we have some great numbers for that. Just for this presentation, I combined them. And for our federal performance measure purposes, we report the 2 county numbers.
Okay.
So in response to some of these national trends, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program was developed, part of the current transportation bill, the Infrastructure Investments and Job Act, to provide $5 billion over 5 years for transportation safety planning and projects to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. There are 2 types of grants associated with the program: planning grants and implementation grants. For the rules of the program, a safety plan must be completed before a jurisdiction can apply for implementation funds. Currently, none of our member agencies have a plan that meet all the requirements that are in place for a safety action plan to pursue those implementation funds. This plan that we're working on will satisfy those requirements and enable Compass and all of its members to pursue implementation awards after we complete that plan. A little background on how we identified the need for a regional transportation safety plan. In the spring of 21, during Compass's performance evaluation process. A subcommittee of our Regional Transportation Advisory Committee was reviewing those performance measures, including safety performance measures. We identified that we were not satisfied with our measures in those areas, and that one of the recommendations was to do a systemic analysis, a regional systemic analysis of safety trends in our area to identify effective countermeasures to improve those safety performance measures. In April of 22, Compass hosted an education speaker series. FHWA outlines how to develop a local road safety plan. We'll be closely following that process, but more at a regional scale. In spring of 22, Compass presented this notice of funding opportunity from the Safe Streets and Roads for All program to our Regional Technical Advisory Committee. And it was decided that there was enough interest regionally, and Compass was best positioned to take the lead on the grant and the planning process. In summer of 22, Compass staff worked with a subcommittee of the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, including staff from Ada County Highway District, to develop a scope of work for this plan ahead of applying for the grant. And then through summer and fall, we got letters of support from all of our member agencies, including Ada County Highway District, and I thank you all for that. We applied in September of 22, and early this year, at the end of January, we're notified we were awarded the $392,000, or 80% of the $490,000 we asked for. We're currently in process of developing an agreement with FHWA to access those dollars. I expect to get the green light in the next coming couple of weeks here. I also expect that a request for proposal for the contract will go out earliest the end of this week, the latest the end of next week. So I'll talk about some of the benefits of taking a regional approach to this plan. I think we have the opportunity to organize around a collective desire to reduce those fatalities and serious injuries. I think there's some synergy and coordination and cooperation that can happen through all our transportation agencies across the valley to take steps to prevent serious injuries and death. We have the opportunity to unlock a lot of funding opportunities for all of our member agencies across the two-county area. Once this plan is in place, all participating agencies can pursue those implementation funds. I think we have the opportunity to form consistent messaging around our mission and our vision of traffic safety, and also the way that we implement these safety countermeasures consistently across the two counties. Our drivers don't see jurisdictional, and so being consistent in how we implement these countermeasures, I think, will be beneficial. We have the opportunity to analyze the transportation system as a whole. Again, drivers don't see boundaries. These corridors cross jurisdictions. There are trends that are not just jurisdictional trends. We have regional behavioral trends and issues and things that we can come back together. Facilitating this plan fits well with Compass's 4 defined or chartered role: plan, implement, technical expertise, facilitate. Compass is an established leader in the regional transportation planning arena, have a governance structure that is meant to facilitate these types of regional issues. We are governed by a body consisting of regional transportation and land use agencies. Compass can support implementation of safety countermeasures through programming federal funding and pursuing federal grants. We have the staff to support pursuing those types of things, those grant opportunities. We house regional scale data sets to look region-wide, and the technical staff to perform the analysis. And we have experience facilitating these type of efforts. We have good established relationships and lines of communication throughout the region. Just to hit on the objectives and the scope of this plan. We intend to develop a regional vision, goals, objectives, performance measures, and targets for transportation safety. That includes all modes of transportation. I intend to set this vision with input from our stakeholders and adoption from leadership. I intend to identify effective ways to monitor regional progress as well. This plan, we intend to engage stakeholders as well as the public to help shape that vision and goals, identify safety concerns, and also shape those countermeasures, things that will work for our region. We intend to identify proven and innovative technologies and practices. This is an opportunity to both highlight effective practices in our region, as well as identify best practices for peer agencies and federal guidance that should be part of the region's policies and practices. We'll perform a data-driven review of the current state of the region's roadway safety for all modes, with a focus on those fatalities and serious injuries. We want to identify those systemic safety trends. What type of roadways or designs are more susceptible to these fatal serious injury crashes? We'll use crash data and other sources of information to identify a high-risk network of roads and intersections. So where can we target some of these efforts? We want to identify evidence-based proven safety measures to address those issues identified in our data-driven analysis. Essentially build a toolkit of proven countermeasures to mitigate the safety concerns identified through data. We want to develop an implementation plan that prioritizes safety actions and strategies that are low cost and high impact. We want to define how this plan will support the development of those projects, how the project will be prioritized, and how projects will be prioritized and funded through existing capital programs and our long-range plan and transportation improvement program, and identify effective ways to measure and monitor implementations of these safety countermeasures. All of these objectives that I listed here meet those requirements for a regional safety action plan in order to pursue those implementation funds. Just to hit the timeline for the plan, the award came early this year. The agreement's coming any day now. Intend to have the request for proposal by the latest early June. I'll be working with a subcommittee to review those proposals. I intend to have ACHD staff as a part of the review committee. Hope to award a contract in July and kick the project off late July, early August, with the intention of wrapping up the plan in 18 months at the end of 2024. I also will include frequent updates to our technical advisory committee, board, and this commission as staff sees fit and at pertinent milestones of the project. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Hunter. I've got a few questions, and first I want to just open up with a comment. I just want to say thank you. I was so excited when I heard the news that you all were awarded this grant, because there were other jurisdictions that wanted to apply for it, and I'm just so thankful that we are going to look at this from a regional perspective, because I think there's a lot of positives and will potentially have a bigger impact, right, in making some of those systemic changes that you talked about. But with that being said, what if, because again, there's a lot of folks probably tuning in, and they think that's great, but they might not understand how is this going to impact or connect with ACHD. So could you speak to the ACHD role in terms of developing and working on the action plan scope, and then our role within the implementation plan?
So working on this scope, ACHD staff was a part of the scope that we developed on part of that subcommittee that helped develop that scope. We followed the objectives or the requirements. Sorry,
I think you're going to a path that wasn't my initial intent with the question. What's our role in working with that contractor and the consultant in developing the plan?
What's in it for ACHD?
Yeah, and
yes,
what are you expecting from us?
So the big things that stand out in my mind, I think the goals and objectives. I think regionally we can come up with some of those, and agencies have different objectives here and there. But I think some of the biggest components that can come out of this plan and be beneficial to ACHD and our other jurisdictions are that data-driven analysis to identify those systemic trends. Where on our network are there characteristics that are similar to where we're seeing fatalities? So a proactive approach to identify those systemic trends and issues, safety concerns and issues. So where should we be targeting our investments? Also identifying countermeasures that are data proven and meet those needs based off the systemic trends. So it's really helping you, or our jurisdictional agencies, ACHD, define the where and the what with regards to safety. I think those are two of the biggest benefits of doing this plan, in addition to accessing money to implement those things.
Okay. And I obviously looking at the timeline that you provided, that's just for the action plan, completing it in winter 2024. But what's the timeline for, acquiring those funds for implementation?
So we don't have a project defined for implementation yet. That's really going to be left upon our jurisdictional agencies and our implementing agencies. That enables all you to pursue those funds.
I understand that, but more of like, when will those funds be available, right? Because, yeah.
Okay. The notice for opportunity for implementation would be spring of 2025 for those implementation funds. There are currently implementation funds available, but we do not have the plan to meet the requirements to go for those dollars.
Okay.
So that'd be the next steps would be early 2025, spring 2025.
And that's when
Should
the
you pursue
announcement.
implementation?
Okay. And then one more question really quick. And then you say too, review of policies and practices. So is that reviewing Compass policies and practices, or Compass and jurisdictions like ACHD?
Both.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Hunter. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, just one quick question, and that is, what is this proposed to do that's any different than what ACHD is doing for itself already?
Well, so when we reached out and we had this conversation with our technical advisory committee, there was no plan that had these systemic issues or trends identified or met the requirements to go for these implementation funds.
We didn't know about those, and we've done and continue to do some pretty exhaustive work in terms of determining what safety issues we face in our road designs or any other thing with regards to roads and fatalities, injuries, whatever. And so, like I said, we've got things already in the hopper in this bailiwick. So what's the difference?
So in my opinion, the difference is this more systemic trend and this proactive trend where are we seeing fatalities and serious injuries? What are the characteristics of those locations or those crashes that were happening? Where might we have that risk elsewhere on the network? Where can we start implementing those strategies? I think right now, a lot of it's been based on just where are the crashes now, where are the high crash locations. Let's shift that approach, turn that around, and say, here were the factors that contributed to that. Let's be proactive and implement that across the network, not just where we're seeing a cluster of accidents here. Because we know this data, a lot of this data can look random when we throw fatalities out there, especially bike and pedestrian fatalities. It can look random on a map. So how do we take the systemic approach and apply it across our network for
your network, which is a number of different jurisdictions, but we do have a number of different jurisdictions that are part of our network. And I'm trying really hard to think of things that we're not already doing in this particular arena, including the words systemic and everything else. So that's why I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, I'm not aware of what ACHD's work is right now in the safety realm. It was brought to us, and there was.
Has anyone asked?
Yeah, we've had some of those conversations, and part of reviewing some of that performance measures, you said it was a need identified and stated from an ACHD employee. We need to take a systemic look. We don't necessarily understand the systemic trends of what's happening. We do really good analysis, location-based, or where we have crashes happening.
Okay, well, as we go forward with this, I guess I'd like to hear some information from our staff.
Okay.
And then just to build off of that too, it's we wouldn't be able to go out and acquire some funds that would be available if we weren't part of this plan. So even if we're doing some of those things already, as you're talking about, it'll be important to be part of it so that we can acquire additional funds to address the issues that we're trying to work on right now, independently from other jurisdictions.
Maybe.
Okay. Any other questions for Hunter? Commissioner
Yes.
McKinney?
Madam President, thank you. Hunter, just a couple of questions. I was heartened to see on those different safety parameters, the accidents, injuries, and so on, that essentially all of the numbers, at least for our region, the numbers are trending in the right direction. And of course, nationwide, things really peaked right around the time of the pandemic and so on. And I think people are still trying to figure out exactly why that is, what caused all of that. But in looking at how, these different parameters that are going down, of course, that's good. Everyone likes to see that. The question comes back is to why, and is it happening because we're spending these additional funds on safety-related projects, or is it for other reasons? I think back, for example, it's been shown, for example, that on-the-job accidents and injuries kind of peaked, I think, in the late 1940s or so, and started this long downward trend that lasted for several decades. And the trend didn't change when OSHA was created. It just continued on the same trend line that existed long before OSHA. And so people look at that and say, yeah, is OSHA really doing it, or was it other things?
Right.
And we need to look at that, of course, with traffic safety as well. And of course, keep in mind always that safety is an endless demand. There will never be an end to things that we can do to improve safety. And in the same vein, no matter how much we spend on safety, there will always be accidents, there will always be injuries, and so on. And so we have to recognize those two basic facts. And so I guess question number one, when we look at these trends, these good positive trends, they seem to be going along with, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, but with the pandemic, traffic suddenly dramatically dropped all over the country. Traffic volumes decreased, and then of course they've been increasing since then. Is that not correct? Are the traffic volumes today greater than they were before the pandemic, or are we still recovering from a low? Do you know?
I can tell you regionally, when I look at some of our automated traffic readers and counters, we're getting close to what 2019 levels are. We're still lower on some of these corridors coming into downtown Boise. We obviously know the workforce population's kind of shift, and that commute's not quite the same as what it was before COVID yet.
Okay.
And I think out on the western end of the valley, you're seeing significant traffic volumes above COVID or pre-COVID levels out there with all the development that's happening.
So overall, we maybe are back to where we were. In some places we're above it, in other places we're still not. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Okay. So when you look at that fact, and you look at the fact that these various safety indicators are all headed in a positive direction, that's always a good thing. We always want to keep that going, and always have to look at that in terms of, what are we doing to improve that, or is it other factors that are improving that? And I think that's worth considering. So with respect to these grants that we're talking about, these additional funds, what sorts of projects is intended to use these? Are we talking about crossing projects? What other types of things?
There's technology-based projects.
What do you mean by that?
So you can improve, there's statistics that show by changing your yellow time, you can reduce red light running. There's technologies out there to detect near misses now that you can install at your intersections. So maybe capturing some of that data and seeing where you have conflict zones before there's a crash, right? So being proactive. There's technologies, for example, on the interstate, I'm thinking of ramp metering can reduce the merging conflict. There's other types of technologies based like that. There's paint on the road. I think this is a broad set of countermeasures. I don't think it's just paint or crossings. I mentioned it's all modes. I think there's technologies. I think there's infrastructure. I think there's education involved in this as well, as part of these countermeasures and solutions.
Okay, so it's a whole variety of things that are all hopefully will, each one will help improve safety in certain ways in the places where they're implemented. Okay, do we have any idea what sort of amount is likely to be involved here?
Are you talking dollars to implement these projects?
Dollars.
I mean, I don't know how much paint costs, but that's your cheapest solution, right? I think there's...
Sure. No, what I'm talking about, because we're seeking grant money from the Federal Highway Administration.
Yeah.
How much are we likely to get? What's the numbers?
So looking at the numbers that, implementation grants that were awarded, tens of millions of dollars to do safety projects.
And so we're likely to get tens of millions, or maybe likely isn't the right word. That's what we're seeking. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, it's good to hear. Obviously, again, there's certainly, if there are funds available from the federal government to do projects of this sort, it certainly can't hurt to go after them. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll mention the downward trend. I think during COVID, we saw rates increase, right? So we have less people driving, but we're still seeing an abnormal rate of fatalities, not numbers. And so I think some of those numbers are, they were lower in 20 and 21, and that's why we're seeing some of those downward trends. And again, those were 5-year averages. So when those wash out of those statistics, I'm not quite sure what the numbers are going to look like.
So in other words, what you're saying is there were fewer passenger miles being driven.
Yes.
So the actual numbers, the total numbers of accidents, injuries, and so on did not increase, but because of fewer vehicle miles being driven, the rates were higher.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President and Hunter, thanks. Certainly one of the things that you already know, that we certainly have discovered, is that we have conflicting policies and conflicting priorities that are absorbed into those policies. We only just started measuring what it was like for someone to walk or bike in the public right-of-way recent years, and we call that level of traffic stress. But we still have design that say it's important to move volumes of traffic, motor vehicle traffic, at speeds on these corridors, and that we get a lot of pushback when people don't feel that they're moving at the speeds and volumes that they want. So there's inherent conflict there, and so we just know that there's this constant pressure back and forth. Do we prioritize the movement of large volumes of vehicles at speed because that's the expectation, and that we just say the loss of human life is an expected thing? Or do we say, no, that is something that is not tolerable, and so that means we need to balance it, and then we dig deeper, we say, here's the conflicts. I'm hoping that through this research, through we actually dig into that conflict and then educate ourselves enough to understand how to make that balance in a way that the public understands why we're making that balance. We have a microcosm of it with a little story that ran on the news the other day. They didn't ask any of the neighbors about some of the near fatalities or fatalities on that street of the people who live there, but they were concerned about the inconvenience of driving on a street at the speed limit by going around curb extensions or chicanes. And so like, well, that's a classic example of the prioritization of the design of that street, and frankly, most of our streets, was to move volumes of traffic without consideration of what it might or might result in the loss of human life. So those hard choices have to be made, and we have to keep making them. And that's the thing that I hope that this can help us to do. Every single project that all 5 of us asked for in the integrated 5-year work plan is designed to bring safety, greater levels of safety, reduce injuries and deaths in neighborhoods. And, they're all on streets that already exist, that were already designed, that we already said we don't want complexity on this street. We don't want to distract drivers by getting the focus on whether kids are playing in the neighborhood, or whether there's a business there where they have customers coming and going. And now we do. We want them to focus on that. We want to have improved crosswalks so that people are aware, people are going to be walking here. And the very policy we're going to talk about on arterial pathways has everything to do with that, actually bringing it right close to the arterial, saying people are supposed to be here. So I hope that this isn't something we just say, well, now we know that this needs to be done, let's send out some PSAs, but that actually does then give us tools that we can help us as public policymakers and the public understand the balance that is made, and then say, yeah, this is why we need to balance. more in favor of preserving human life and less in favor of perhaps, in this context, the movement of large volumes of vehicles at high speeds.
Thank you for that comment. Yes, I think data talks, and I think that having this data-driven approach to show where we have a high-risk network and having data to show which countermeasures work and how they work, I think will be effective in communicating that.
Commissioner Gold.
Thank you for the presentation. I think it's great that Compass has been awarded the grant to create the plan, and I think having access to those federal dollars to create a safer network is going to benefit the region. So I appreciate you coming in and presenting on it.
And then just to bring it home, Hunter, I just was wondering, what's the tentative plan to provide updates to the commission and staff about like those systemic issues, right? I obviously we want to see you before the plan is fully baked. So, and we're constantly making improvements as well. So I want to make sure that we're all working in concert with each other. So what's your plan to keep us informed?
Sure. I intend to have really a direct project team of a few of our member agencies that include to keep ACHD in that circle. We provide frequent updates. We'll provide frequent updates to our technical advisory committee, which ACHD staff sits on, the Compass board, which
In which staff, if that's all right, that'd be helpful.
I believe that the gentleman behind me, Dave, is part of the technical advisory committee.
Okay.
Who else?
Okay, thank you. That's Tom and Dave. That's enough for us. That's great.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll work with your staff to really determine which milestones and what to bring back to this commission to share with you all.
That would be really helpful because, we were deeply committed to making sure that we're addressing all the things that you talked about, and it would be a massive missed opportunity if we go down a path that we might have missed something, right? If we would have known something that was being discussed in the conversations with your consultant or as a regional level, right? So just definitely welcome you and our team to please voice those lessons and insights to the commission, especially when we're coming up with policy change or projects, that type of thing. So definitely urge you to communicate with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hunter.
Thanks for having me this afternoon.
Thank you for being here. Okay, moving on to the second item on our work session, pavement preservation presentation. Welcome, Rick.
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. My name is Rick Petroselli. I'm the pavement management engineer here for the district. I am joined today online by Margot Yap, who is our expert pavement management consultant with Nichols Consulting Engineers. And they will be providing us services throughout the rest of this fiscal year. And I'll highlight those as I go through the presentation of where that expertise is being used and where it's coming from. I also like to give a shout out to the back. She is the glue that holds this pavement management team together. She is the asset management specialist here. And I just want to let you guys know that the two of us are here and moving forward with pavement management here at the district.
Thank you both for what you do.
So for overview, over a few items here. First, we're going to talk about a little bit about who Rick Petroselli is, and then we'll dive into some of our pavement management fundamentals, our current programs and projects that we have, and then we will provide, or I'll provide an update of our pavement management project with NCE. So starting with that, who am I? I am a licensed civil engineer in Idaho and California. I have over 30 years of experience in civil engineering. I started dipping my toe a little bit in the wastewater field for the first 7 or 8 years of my life. moved into flood protection, so the water got a little cleaner. And then I decided, I think it's time to get on top of the water and get on the pavement. And I've been spending about 12 years now, either building roads, managing pavement projects, and managing pavements. So that's a little bit about me. But let's talk about our network. We can't manage pavement without a network. As shown here, we have 5,337 approximately lane miles of pavement within our network. That's broken down here into our functional classes. That is a substantial network in this region, and without pavement management, things are gonna not go well. That's an estimated value of about $3 billion. So to just give you an idea of what we have out there as a network. But then the question is how do we manage that network? What do we do to manage this network? Well, I'm going to start with some of the fundamentals and the basics. Is to manage network, we need to determine the condition of our pavement. We need to look at how the pavement acts as it ages. Some of you may have seen this before, but as pavement ages, it starts showing signs of distresses. And this is a key component that NCE and Margot's team is currently doing right now. They are out there with specialists, inspectors and evaluators going through, looking at our roadway segments, a portion of it, and taking data from the field, entering that data into our Street Saver tool. Now, when I say data, when they're out there, they're looking at cracks, or they're looking at distortions if there's roots popping through, looking at patches from utilities, raveling and weathering, whether the larger stones are washing away, if you will, or if the finer stones are washing away, would be like the weathering. So to start, we get that information from the field. We put that into our Street Saver tool, and it starts this process to determine what we consider our pavement condition, or in this case, a pavement condition index, PCI. Shown here, the PCI on the left goes from 0 to 100, but we break it down into categories where from 75 to 100 is very good, 50 to 75 is good, 25 to 50 poor, and then anything less than 25 is very poor. You can see in the pictures here a PCI of 90, extremely brand new road, if you will. As it goes down to a 60, you can start seeing some cracking, maybe some trenches, and then 45, it starts showing a lot more weathering and raveling. And then under 20, it has a lot of alligator cracking. It has a lot of distresses that are gonna force it into a replacement as opposed to a treatment. And shown here on the pie chart, you can see that right now, currently, we are substantially in the green with all of our PCIs. And that's a general PCI for the entire network.
Rick, I'm confused though with the pie chart, because there's two different numbers in that orange sliver, or is there a smaller sliver next to that orange sliver?
It's such a small sliver of the roads that are in the very poor.
Okay, and is that like a percent? It's not a percentage, so is that
Those are
like
lane miles.
That's lane miles, thank you, because
Those are
that
lane miles right now.
that would be an important thing to have on this key, so, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So once we get the pavement condition index, what do we do with it, or what's the importance of it? Well, it actually correlates with the age of the pavement. So this is a chart that was actually shown last week in Lloyd's presentation in our chip seal. You can see on the left side the pavement condition, which represents the index, and then on the bottom is the age of the pavement. The red curve is a standard curve for asphalt pavement. What happens to asphalt over time? And as you can see this curve, and this is lots of research, lots of data on this, the first 75% of life of it is within the first 10 years. And then you can see it drops off dramatically right at that critical point of where it starts getting into very poor and poor. what we can do and what we are doing is if we chip seal and the road is in a good condition, we can keep it in a good condition. And as you see here by the shark fin shapes going across there, every time we chip seal, we add life to our pavement. And we keep it in the good condition as long as we can at a very reasonable or efficient manner.
Commissioner McKinney.
Yes, Rick, just one quick question. Is this graph, specific to the climate here in Idaho? Because I know that, you know, the lifespan and the quality of pavement, climate has a whole lot to do with it. Is this curve general across the country, or is this specific to a climate like we have here?
This is a normalized curve for all types of pavements in all types of areas. This was
Okay.
done, studies across the board, they came up with, if it's an arterial collector, it's a normal curve. You see that there's not exact numbers in it.
Mm-hmm.
But what's good about our Street Saver database and our tool is that we generate our own curves from our roads based on our data and our inspections.
Do you have
But it's
have you compiled a curve like this for our local area? You say you have the
curve-
numbers and you could, but does
We
it
have
exist?
individual segment curves. I would have to check to see, but I
Okay,
believe we can.
because that, actually, I would be interested to see that if you have that.
I can look into that and see if we can do it for combined.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, but also, where exactly did this graph come from? Because we're missing a citation or something to that effect.
Yeah, in general, that is from NCE and our experts. It's been generated over the years. It's very common curve used in all the research for all the pavement studies.
Thank you.
If you like. The generalized curves was developed back probably in the 70s or so by state highway agencies, Caltrans, Idaho IDT, Arizona DOT, and what they did was they gathered a lot of data and found that the curves kind of followed this shape. It's called an S-shaped curve. Some of them are steeper. For instance, your higher volume roads will have a steeper drop. Your local roads will look a little bit flatter, but they all follow the shape. So over time, most local agencies have gotten data that pretty much, are similar, have similar shapes to what Rick is presenting here.
And it was Margot.
Yeah, Madam
Sorry.
President, Commissioners, our apologies, that is Margot, she's the president of NCE, she call.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So moving forward with this, what are we currently doing at ACHD? We currently are, these are our current maintenance practices right now. On the top, the four show what we're currently doing with our crack seal, our chip seal. We have slurry seal projects and micro seal. Those are considered seals. Those are considered what preventative maintenance, if you will. They are lower cost or cost effective. The bottom two treatments are a little more capitalized for roads that are in poor condition. Those are the hot mix overlays, asphalt overlays, and the full depth reconstruction. Kind of give an idea, the table on the right kind of shows you the added life, the added age that we can do. And of course, that's based on traffic and other conditions. But by adding treatments in the good, we could potentially extend the life of the pavement.
And then do you have like similar graphs and tables that explain the obviously we're talking about pavement, but similarly and dissimilarly to the concrete piece of this? Do you have that as well?
Yes, the PCC or the Portland Concrete is in this system. It's in our network, and it does have a separate curve.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we do not have any preventive maintenance for our concrete. Concrete, the life of it in general is years and years beyond asphalt. So at this point, our concrete is fairly new. There may be some crack sealing here and there, but yeah, right now we don't have any practices on the concrete.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I'm kind of teasing with my memory here a little bit, but I'm thinking 8 years ago when we saw this particular slide, there were a little bit different numbers on the far right column. That we were doing the chip seal, for instance, a little bit more frequently than that 7 to 10 years. And I'm wondering if the problems that we have with staffing of our chip seal teams is making that have to become longer.
So that column is the general extension of life for that asphalt. So our chip seal program right now is on a 7-zone rotation, which is a 7-year rotation for our arterials and collectors and residentials if we can fit them in. But this is generally what industry now is saying. If you go out and chip seal, you could get 7 to 10 years, depending on the traffic and depending on the quality of your chip seal. So we're not following this. This is just what would add to the life. We're following our 7-zone maintenance.
And we're able to do that still?
We are currently doing that 7-year zone rotation, yes.
Thanks.
So I'd like to give you a brief look at what our current pavement management program is today. On the right-hand side, you can see our maintenance program. That's your chip seal and our fog seal, currently done every year. And then our crack seal, done by our maintenance team, is done every year. And that would be, the crack seal is in the zone ahead of the chip seal, is what we're doing for our maintenance program. So that is budgeted in our maintenance program, and that's what we've been working on. In our capital program, all of these projects are yearly, and they're all budgeted in our 5-year CIP, with the exception of the new slurry seal, which I believe is going to be coming in the budget, but I will have to check on that. But all those projects right now are yearly projects. They're already in our budget, and they all apply pavement on the road in some way, shape, or form for our pavement management program. So one more other benefit that the street safety do with the expertise from NCE and Margot's team is that we can start looking at our budget needs and do a budget analysis. So as our budget needs, we can look at, with the limited budget, what kind of road maintenance and repairs can we do? What roads should we repair? When should we repair them? What treatments should we apply? How much will it cost? Those are great questions, and we can run scenarios within our Street Saver to see what can we do? What would be an impact to our current budget if we want to raise our PCI? If we want to maintain the PCI, what it will take? If we want to improve the PCI, what kind of budget would it take? And it actually lays out decisions for us and helps us guide us through all these road segments. There's 13,000 plus segments that have to be looked at and evaluated. So that part of the Street Saver and the expertise from NCE gives us a report, which brings me to the point where we will be having a second presentation, and we will see those results. We will see the outcomes. We will see the decision trees and where we're moving forward. That's expected at our next presentation. So our next steps is, as I talked about, the inspections and the evaluations are going on as we speak. We are at 90% completion for those evaluations. And we will spend the month of July taking all that data, putting it into the Street Saver. This will all be done by NCE. And then at that point, we will work with NCE to start doing budget analysis and reports. What's good about this budget analysis and reports with the Street Saver is we can use our current costs and our current bids and our current proposals that we're getting right now, and we can put that in. So we'll have up-to-date information on what it's going to cost to do certain treatments. And then in September, there'll be a final presentation to the commission that'll summarize the results and give you an idea of where we are at with our PCI and what we can do to increase it or keep it the same depending on where we're at with it. So with that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you so much. I just have one question. So with the, and for some reason the word is escaping me, but the cuts into our pavement from utilities or TDS and that, like, I'm curious, you know, we've seen, oh goodness, the quality of some of those cuts can be, they vary. So how does that factor into this? Because I think there's a lot of different variables in the pavement health and vitality, right? And so I think it would be really helpful if there's a particular type of issue, like those types of issues that are degrading the pavement overall as a system. How do you guys prepare those separate reports, and would you be willing to if you don't already do so?
So right now, the trench cuts and the trenching,
Yeah,
that's
you.
done mostly by the utility companies. It does show up, if you've seen the picture in there, there's a calculation that's done, so it does factor into our condition. I've seen some out there, like you said, that are starting to spall around the cuts and stuff. The inspectors could actually count that twice. If the patch is beautiful and it looks good and it's holding up, they'll call it a patch. If the patch is starting to crumble around, they could calculate that and put that in, which means that would affect our PCI. I am currently looking into options for utility cuts and utility repairs, and working with the utility companies. Right now, you know, their idea is to go out, make the narrowest cut they can, get in, make the smallest cut, and get out. And it does leave us in a very precarious situation, yes.
Well, we just have a lot of, several teams are working on other aspects of this, whether it's, you know, Ryan's team, you know, so I just want to make sure, Rick, that you're collaborating with them, and so that, you know, the commission has like a full picture, holistic picture of the impacts to this and how we can work with utility companies, or how we can work proactively on our end too to make sure and mitigate those issues.
Yes, we
Preserve the
did,
pavement.
as soon as I came in, we did implement the asphalt task force. Again, we are meeting, but quarterly for sure, to discuss these major items. But we are looking at budget avenues to see if we can, you know, if a utility company is gonna come in and slice up the entire road, but only rebuild part of it, maybe we can look at, is there a collaboration before we can rebuild the rest?
Yeah.
Depending on the condition of it.
And honestly,
So-
that's a big concern of mine. Yep. Okay, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I appreciate you bringing that up, because as I drive my district, especially on South 10 Mile, Linder, Hubbard, Cloverdale, that picture that you have there looks like a 90 PCI compared to what a lot of the parts of those roads look like today. And I would love if inside of our policies and with our inspector teams and our abilities to possibly force the contractor world, the utility companies and others who cut into the roadway and leave a mess, or they don't leave it the way they found it, that we can force that issue, which will help our budget a lot going forward.
Any other questions? Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, Madam President, and thanks, Rick. Always enjoy this presentation. It's, I think, my 11th or something similar. But this is an important year because this is where I personally have to explain it to a lot of people, because the chip sealing is happening in Zone 4. But I also appreciate that we've done a much better job every year of making sure the public understands through our communications, through the website, as to why this is a valuable component of maintaining the 3 billion plus assets that they own. The question I have, and it's probably just as much to you as to Jennifer, is this there's an assumption that all pathways are side concrete and all roadways are asphalt, but that's not true. There's lots of places where the walkway, the pathway, the sidewalk is actually asphalt as well. It's protected by an extruded curb. And the resistance to try allowing more of those is because of the maintenance. We want to be able to maintain the whole thing and do a chip seal once. And with the curb there, it makes that difficult or impossible to do. So the question is, as we move towards pathways, asphalt pathways, adjacent to more and more arterials, which I hope we do, then it's a question, that asphalt deteriorates at the same rate as the asphalt on the road does. So we have to have the same principles apply to maintaining that asset and not let it deteriorate, but presumably we would have smaller equipment to do that. So you don't need to do it now, but just sort of explain, we're already budgeting the maintenance of that with sweeping and snow removal and so forth. And so I'm wondering how we're gonna maintain the pavement condition on those pathways as part of maintaining the whole asset base.
So I will address the asphalt part of it. It usually goes down a little thinner and it's not subject to heavy loads, but you're absolutely right. It's gonna age just like, you know, the treatments that, the slurry treatments and other seals that can be put on it. It's a little more time consuming and there is equipment out there. And then I would defer to Jennifer if there's anything right now with the current plan, but it's something that we could look into. We are doing the slurry seals in the cul-de-sacs right now. I mean, the cul-de-sac, a lot of people don't consider as a roadway, but it is our paved network and we have to do some treatment in there. We can't chip seal, so we have to look for alternatives, but you can seal those pavements and it'll add life to those pavements. And it'll help put some more fines on top. Weathering is big, right? Weathering and those are big with the rains and stuff. So yes, those treatments can be applied.
Commissioner McKinney.
Thank you. Yeah, Rick, just a quick question. I don't recall if we've discussed this before, or maybe this is not exactly in the work that you do, but does our pavement condition inspection, are we using automated inspection systems, LiDAR, those sorts of things for imaging and analyzing pavement condition, or are we still doing it kind of the old-fashioned way?
So this year with NCE, they do have their high-tech mobile unit. It is, matter of fact, we had it on display here a while back. It actually can sense bumps. It has a bunch of cameras on it. The cameras can feed into, and the driver and the assistant driver can feed data into the same software that we're using, the Street Saver. It goes a lot faster. It runs about 30 miles an hour. And that, we do cover a lot of miles with that because you get a lot more done. It's still visual. It's not structural evaluation. It's still visual.
I see. So the computer is just helping the individuals do the analysis. It's not actually kicking out the complete analysis itself.
Right. The data comes in. They still have to massage the data and make sure it makes sense to what the cameras are looking at. And the feel of the bumps and all that stuff all shows up. And then, yeah, eventually it still has to be data entered into the system. We are manually walking a lot of miles out there right now. Margot's team is out there literally taking measurements and walking. And they're experts. I mean, we met with them and did some training, and it's 20 or 30 years of looking at pavement and understanding what certain cracks look like and how to calculate, the alligator size of the alligators and all that stuff. So it's a super expertise from her team.
Thank you. Hopefully someday we'll be able to do it all in an automated way, maybe with aerial photography or something like that, and just, save a lot of money, but we'll have to see. That's the future.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
for your presentation.
Have a good evening.
All right. So we're a little over time, which is fine. We moving into the pre-commission agenda. So just for the president's report, I just wanted to alert you all that Director Wong sent you the revised letter to ITD based off of the feedback we received last week. And that's in front of you, and we sent it electronically. And I guess I just wanted to hear really quickly if you have any concerns, because if not, we've got the final copy and we'd appreciate signatures if we can move forward tonight.
I do have a couple of additional thoughts.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to go through these here in public or if I can just hand them on to you.
Yeah, well, you can share them with me and we can work through it.
Well, at the very bottom of page 1, the sentence that starts the foreseeable consequences, I'm not entirely comfortable with that sentence. I think it me think. It may just be the attorney in me, getting a little bit concerned about, when we talk about what is foreseeable. We need to be very careful making statements of that sort. So I would like to kind of, what's the word, soften that language a bit, make it a little less, strict. And then the.
Can I just ask you a question about that though? So it's just about your attorney like lens to that, but are you saying that you're worried about that implicating the agency or the fact that it isn't true? Because I would say it is true, and we have evidence that that is the case.
Yeah, I think, anytime any entity makes a positive statement about what is foreseeable, they, create for themselves a large potential, liability. Because that is precisely what, litigants point to in any kind of situation. See, you admitted that this was foreseeable, therefore you're liable. So I'd rather say something to the effect of, well, you know, I don't have the exact language. Let me think.
Hey, Dave? I
Yeah.
got a question about that. Now, if and I don't disagree with what you're saying here as far as how it works legally and in court and all that stuff. But here where the foreseeable consequences, I don't think could be any worse than, death and injury. So if we get any consequences that are not according to this, on this foreseeable scale, it's better than what we're expecting.
Well, wouldn't it be better to say something like, possible, accident and safety issues, something of that sort? A little more general, because that's the sort of thing we deal with all the time. I would feel much more comfortable, using language like that. Possible safety and accident, issues. And then, of course, one of the things that's a little unclear in the entire letter is, the specific project that's being discussed. The last two paragraphs each say, ACHD cannot support moving forward, and the last paragraph, ACHD cannot support the current design. It's a little bit unclear specifically what we're referring to, because we don't, in paragraph 1, we talk about a crossing project that we want to do, but then it's not clear if those paragraphs in the end are referring to the project that we want to do or some other project. So those last two paragraphs are a little unclear. Those are my primary concerns about the letter, that I think we could improve both of those. More specificity about what project we're referring to, and that last sentence of the last paragraph on the first page. So.
Okay.
Those
Well,
are my
thank you, Commissioner McKinney. I would disagree with I appreciate you calling attention to the potential confusion about the second bit, but staff know exactly what project we're referring to, because we also tried to work with them. And looking at the first paragraph, it's saying, create a safe pedestrian and bicyclist crossing the vicinity of 43rd Street, because we offered 43rd and also looking at exploring 44th if that was something they were more amenable to, which that's the reason for that word, which could also create some confusion about what are we talking about. But that was because we were responding to their request to expand it to a different roadway potentially. So I would say that how it's written is reflective of where ITD requested us to explore, basically.
So in that last full paragraph, when we say the current design, are we talking about the design, the ITD's design of a crossing at 44th Street or whatever it was? Is that what it's referring to?
I don't know what you're referring to, because what I see, are you talking about the last paragraph?
Yeah, ACHD cannot support the current design and requests that ITD reconsider.
I mean, I'm happy to amend that and just say, yeah, project, or, because basically they're saying we don't want any design. And so that's what we're saying we don't support. Because we're saying, hey, let's do this, and they're saying, no, we don't support that design. And we're not going to support their their request.
Okay, then the previous paragraph then, moving forward, ACHD cannot support moving forward with what?
With this,
It's
without
unclear.
a safe pedestrian bicyclist crossing. That's the rest of the sentence.
What, is that sentence trying to say ACHD cannot support, continue with the current design and not doing anything? 'Cause
Right.
moving forward, to me, implies doing something. So if we say we can't support moving forward, it's just confusing, as I read it, what
Okay.
exactly we're referring to.
Well, and some of it's wrapped up in, remember, the RAISE grant package, right? So there's a lot of projects that we're working with them on because they happen to cross ITD's roads. And so they're trying to say, no, we don't want to do this project with you. And so you can't do it. And so it's part of
So that,
the bigger picture as well as this one project, if that makes any, the language is reflective of just the nature of how this project is lumped in with other projects.
it's just, well, the confusion is that where it says ACHD cannot support moving forward without a safe pedestrian bicyclist crossing here, what it's really saying is ACHD cannot support not making changes to this crossing. Is that what the intent of that sentence is?
I think we would be open to making some changes to the initial design if that was if they said, yes, we will do a hawk signal or something, right? We want to basically we want a safe crossing. So they're not even saying, yes, and let's work together on it. So, but I think, Commissioner McKinney, I think that I really do want to move forward with this letter as it's written. And you're happy to make your determination if you want to sign on to it or not. But Bruce, did you have something that you felt?
Madam President, Commissioners, let me assure all of you that ITD is fully aware of the intent of the Commission's perspective that you all discussed, I think, a week ago on this. They are fully prepared, knowing that the Ada County Highway District does not support their current design, which is on 30 whatever it is street, and that you fully have asked them to stop and let's talk seriously about 43rd. So you're all correct on this, but the intent of this letter is to provide a formal, after all of the informal discussions we've had between staffs and other members there, a formal position by the district. Again, I truly appreciate Commissioner McKinney. It's very important. I understand that, and I do appreciate that. Something fierce, but again, let me assure all of you that Compass, Garden City Mayor, Boise, ITD District 3, and after a discussion I had earlier with the leadership at ITD headquarters, they fully understand your position. This is just a mechanism of saying, okay, it's in writing. If that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. And that's it for me. Director, do you have?
Madam President?
Oh,
Madam President,
Commissioner
I
Getz?
did my homework. You said after we discussed the policy that Steve Price kindly put up in his slides last week, Steve and Tom, about the proposals for, some policy changes. So I went in and looked and I noticed there's a few things.
As it relates
relates
to
to sidewalks or
side paths
pathways.
or multi-use paths.
It's all under, yeah.
Okay.
We have to, that's again, a clarification of definition, so I think we need to clarify, it's all a sidewalk, or we have to create a whole new definition of what a pathway is, So, I sent it out, take a look at it, see what you think. But I
Thank you.
did my homework.
Thank you.
And I gave everybody an electronic copy just before we started the meetings, and it should be available publicly if anyone else wants to look at it.
I appreciate that, and it's really tight, and thank you for doing that, because I have a meeting with staff next week, to talk about this and next steps and all of that good stuff,
And
so.
it's an opportunity to put in specific references to our level of traffic stress
Yep.
and the PROAG expectations, because PROAG was one of the things they cited, Tom cited, I think, in his presentation, as this is what we need. So, yeah, when we find conflicting language, we should fix it at that time and not just do pieces here and then pieces here. So that's why I went forward and did my job.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. All right, Director.
Madam President, Commissioners, I'll do something I generally don't do. I'm going to be very brief. First off, as you know, we have been looking at adding other intersections for the scramble crossing that we have at BSU. Our tremendous team at DTS has come up with 9 candidates, and I'll send those to you later that they'll be studying in the LPI initiative moving forward. So that's a big deal. And most important for today, we are celebrating the birthday of a very important member of our team, and that is Stacy Spencer, the person who actually runs the entire operation. So I know that we're a little behind. I'm okay with that because these are approximate times and such. But commissioners, if you'd like to join us in the next couple of minutes or 10 or whatever for some birthday cake and such and celebrating her birthday, I'm sure we'd be very happy with it.
And then while I have the mic though, I just want to ask, does anyone have any questions about the agenda? Because I forgot to ask that. Any else? Okay, good, great.
I do have questions on item number 5 on the consent agenda. We can cover those when we start the
Thank you.
meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner McKay. All right. I'm gonna start whacking. Yes. No, we didn't. All right. Just had a raspberry. Hold on. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. It's now 6:03. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome folks that are online and in person. First order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. If we do not have any of those requests tonight, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam President, before we approve the consent agenda, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. There's a couple of pieces of information I think would be helpful for the commission and everyone to be aware of regarding item number 5 on the consent agenda, the bid award for the civil site work for the Franklin Traffic Operations Center. And I spoke with staff a minute ago, but there was one remaining question that Commissioner Hanson brought up, so I want to be sure that it's clear. It's my understanding, and I don't know who can help us with that information.
Sean, would you mind coming up to the podium?
So it appears to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Gentry Civil Corp submitted the low bid, but since McIlvain is the, project manager? Is that what they are?
They are the CMGC, so the construction manager, general contractor.
Okay, so they're the general contractor. Gentry Civil Corp will then be a subcontractor, right? And so their bid was 3.7 million approximately. And then an additional 1 million or so is added on to that. Those are the management fees for McIlvain Construction, and that's why the approval here is to award that to McIlvain Construction. Is that correct?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is correct.
So our contract is with McIlvain Construction. Gentry Corp is a subcontractor to them.
Correct.
Okay. So then one remaining question though that Commissioner Hanson brought up is that it looked like in the bidding, McIlvain also submitted a bid to do the civil work, but theirs was not the low bid. And so basically now you have a general contractor who was bidding to do a certain part of work that they would then oversee themselves, instead didn't get that bid, but they're still overseeing the work of now another contractor who did get that bid. And that's the situation we've got?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that's correct.
Okay. This sounds like kind of an unusual situation. Am I wrong?
Well, it's the construction manager, general contractor contract that we have. So it is a little bit different than our normal procedures, but the contract does allow McIlvain to bid on a certain percentage of the work themselves. I believe it was about 20% of the contract they were allowed to bid on, but in this case, they bid on it and they just were not the low bidder.
So would McIlvain still be able to bid on other parts of the project that have not been bid yet?
Yes.
Okay. In which case, if they get those bid portions, they wouldn't be considered a subcontractor. That would be part of their general contract. Would that be correct?
Yes, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, like I said, it's just kind of a complicated thing. I just want to make sure I had a clear handle on what was going on. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Hanson, do you have something?
I just wanted, and the management fee is regardless of whether they are actually get the bid for the subcontract or not, the management fee would be the same.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that's correct. And it's also the management fee, but it's also insurances and bonding stuff that they would have to provide anyway.
Okay. It just seemed confusing. They're, managing themselves if they had been successful, but they would have, okay. And that's actually not in this contract, that's in a previous contract that we did with, general contractor.
Yes, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, in the beginning, we had a general contract with McIlvain as the general contractor.
Okay. It just raised some interesting questions when they were bidding on their own, subcontract. Thanks.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Thank you, Sean. All right, moving into the regular agenda. We just have one item on the regular agenda, and that's the National Public Works Week proclamation. Director Wong. Oh. Well, welcome, Ms. Behringer. And this is a request for approval.
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Jennifer Behringer, Deputy Director of Maintenance. I'm pleased to be here today to present to you for signature the proclamation for National Public Works Week, and I will read it as such. National Public Works Week Proclamation, May 21st to 27th, 2023, Connecting the World. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, emergency management, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Ada County. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are federally mandated first responders and the engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Ada County to gain knowledge and maintain ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works, first responders, and public works programs in their respective. Whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association, be it now resolved. We, the Board of the Ada County Highway District Commissioners, do hereby designate the week May 21st to the 27th, 2023, as National Public Works Week. We urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness hereof. And Madam President, I'll bring it to you for signature.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. Commissioners, any questions?
I was thinking maybe Steve had written that, but it was so long I knew he couldn't last that long.
Yeah, so we need a motion to adopt. Thank you for that.
Madam President, I would move that that we approve the request to for the National Public Works Week proclamation.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you, Jennifer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on to public communications. Ms. Stacy?
There is no.
Okay, and then with that, our meeting is adjourned.